cousin expected me to let her family move in. My son begged me to say no. I refused. She called me selfish, still won't speak to me. And now karma is serving the eviction notice on her entitlement. A couple of weeks ago, my cousin Lisa called me in full panic mode. She, her husband, and their 2 kids were getting evicted, and she asked if they could crash at our place for a few months tops. Now I love Lisa. We grew up together, and she's always been a fun, chaotic presence in my life. But she's also the kind of person who makes questionable life choices, and then acts surprised when things blow up in her face. Her husband, Darren, has bounced between jobs for years, and Lisa is a self-proclaimed freelancer, which is a fancy way of saying she hasn't had steady work in ages. They had been renting a house well beyond their means, and when their landlord finally had enough of the late payments, they were left scrambling. Here's the thing. I probably could let them stay. We have a guest room and a finished basement, and financially, we'd be fine covering some extra groceries and utilities for a bit. But my 16-year-old son Caleb was adamantly against it. When I brought it up to him, he barely let me finish my sentence before saying, "Please no." I asked why, expecting the usual teenage complaints about privacy or space, but his reasons went deeper than I thought. Last time they visited, he said, they stayed for 2 days, and I wanted to crawl out of my skin. That visit had been an experience. Lisa's kids, ages 6 and 9, treated our house like a jungle gym, leaving messes everywhere, touching Caleb's stuff without asking, and being generally loud and chaotic. Darren had opinions about everything from our internet speed to the way we loaded our dishwasher, and Lisa had a habit of inviting herself into conversations she wasn't part of, giving unsolicited parenting advice, despite the fact that she clearly had her own mess to deal with. Caleb reminded me that his room had basically become a daycare during that visit, with Lisa's kids barging in at all hours, messing with his gaming setup, and at one point, nearly breaking his headphones. "It's my last 2 years of high school," he said. I can't live like that." And I got it. Our home is his safe space. He's got AP classes, college applications coming up, and a social life that, let's be real, is already hanging by a thread thanks to all the school pressure. Asking him to suddenly share his space, indefinitely, with 2 hyperactive kids and a couple of adults who can't seem to get their act together felt unfair. So I told Lisa no. I tried to soften the blow, offering to help in other ways, helping them find a rental, pitching in for a deposit, even offering to let them store some of their stuff in our garage until they figured things out. But she was furious. She called me selfish, said family is supposed to help each other, said I was letting my teenage son make grown-up decisions. I pointed out that, well, her grown-up decisions were the reason she was in this mess. That didn't go over well. Now half my family thinks I'm heartless. My mom, Lisa's aunt, keeps guilt-tripping me saying, "Caleb is just a kid, he'll adapt." My brother straight up called me a jerk for putting my son's comfort over Lisa's family's basic needs. But here's the thing. Caleb is my priority. He's my kid. My job is to make sure he's happy, stable, and set up for success. Lisa and Darren are adults. Adults who made poor financial decisions, and now want me to fix them at my son's expense. So am I a bad person for saying no? Because honestly, I don't feel bad. Just tired. Of course, after I said no, things did not settle down. Lisa doubled down. She texted me every single day with some variation of, "We have nowhere to go. The kids are going to be traumatized." Or my personal favorite, "I just never thought you would turn your back on family like this." It didn't stop with her either. My mom kept calling, doing that sigh she does when she's disappointed in me, followed by lines like, "Sweetheart, if this happened to you, wouldn't you want someone to step up?" My uncle Lisa's dad left a long, ranting voicemail about how family is supposed to take care of each other, and how I was raising a selfish child by letting Caleb have a say in this. Raising a selfish child? Excuse me? Caleb's not selfish, he's just self-aware. He knows what he can handle, and he's advocating for himself. If anything, I'm proud of him for that. But trying to explain boundaries to my extended family is like trying to teach a fish to ride a bike. And then Darren, who, mind you, has never reached out to me directly for anything, sent me a text. It was short and to the point. If the roles were reversed, I'd open my home to you without hesitation. Which is hilarious, because the roles would never be reversed. Why? Because I don't spend rent money on dumb stuff like limited edition sneakers, or a monthly subscription box for collectible swords. Yes, swords. Darren collects swords. I ignored the text. The thing is, I was feeling guilty at first. I mean, it is a tough situation, and I wouldn't wish eviction on anyone. But the more they pushed, the more it became less about their need for help and more about their belief that they were entitled to it. They weren't asking anymore, they were demanding. And then just when I thought they might finally give up, they went nuclear. A few days later, my mom called, but instead of guilt-tripping me directly, she went for the sneak attack. Lisa and the kids are here with me right now, she said. They're in a really bad place. The kids are crying, and Lisa she just doesn't know what to do. Oh, my God. This woman actually thought that ambushing me with crying children over the phone would change my mind. I shut that down fast. Mom, I get that this is hard, but making me feel like a monster isn't going to change the situation. She got all quiet then said, just think about it, okay? I hung up and immediately went to vent to Caleb, because at this point, if my family was going to keep pulling emotional warfare, I needed to make sure he was still okay with everything. And you know what this kid said to me? Mom, we don't owe them our house just because they made bad choices. 16 years old. And he had more sense than half the adults in this family. That's when I realized something. If I caved, if I let them move in just to keep the peace, I'd be teaching Caleb the worst possible lesson. That other people's comfort matters more than his. That saying no doesn't mean anything if someone pushes hard enough. So I stood my ground. Lisa and Darren ended up finding a short-term rental, with some help from another relative, who is definitely regretting it already, from what I've heard. My mom is still annoyed with me. My uncle is probably still ranting to anyone who will listen. And Lisa? Well, she's still too hurt to speak to me. And you know what? That's fine. Because at the end of the day, I chose my son. And I'd make that choice again in a heartbeat. You'd think that after they found another place, things would finally calm down. But no, because some people can't just move on like normal adults. Lisa may not have been speaking to me, but she was definitely speaking about me. I found out through the family grapevine, aka my cousin Emily, who is the designated keeper of drama, that Lisa had been going around telling people that I had turned my back on her in her darkest hour. She made it sound like she and her kids were on the streets, clutching a single suitcase in the rain, when in reality, they had moved into a fully furnished short-term rental that my uncle and aunt helped pay for. And apparently, I wasn't just a bad cousin, I was a bad mother too. Lisa's new favorite talking point? That I was letting a teenager dictate how our household was run, which, according to her, meant I was raising Caleb to be entitled and selfish. Now let's pause for a moment. The irony here is painful. Lisa, the same person who refused to downsize her lifestyle, ignored every financial red flag, and then expected someone else to bail her out, was calling my son entitled? Yeah. Okay. The worst part? People actually started taking her side. A few relatives who hadn't even spoken to me in years suddenly had opinions. I got a long Facebook message from my great-aunt Linda, who I have not seen since 2011 by the way, telling me that family should come first, and that I was being cruel. Cruel. For not allowing my home to be overrun by two hyperactive kids, an unemployed man-child and my cousin, who treats responsibility like it's a disease. But the real cherry on top? Lisa started posting cryptic Facebook statuses about betrayal. I'm talking peak middle school energy. It's always the people you least expect. Nothing like going through the hardest time of your life and realizing who actually cares about you. Some people have forgotten what family means. SMH. Oh, and my personal favorite. Karma always finds a way. Girl, what? Lisa. Sweetheart. What is karma gonna do? Give me a winning lottery ticket for avoiding your nonsense? At this point, I had two choices. Engage and defend myself, which would just pour gasoline on the already raging dumpster fire. Completely ignore it and live my life, which is exactly what I did. And you know what? It drove her insane. Emily kept me updated, because let's be real, I wanted to know how far Lisa would take this. And apparently, my refusal to engage made things worse. Lisa wanted me to fight back, because it would justify her whole victim narrative. Instead, I just carried on like nothing happened, which really made her mad. Meanwhile, Caleb was thriving. After everything settled down, I realized how much stress this whole situation had been putting on him. He started sleeping better, his mood improved, and one night over dinner he actually thanked me. "Seriously, Mom," he said. "If they had moved in, I think I would have lost my mind." And that right there made everything worth it. So where are we now? Lisa and Darren are still in their rental, probably making more questionable life choices. My mom is slowly coming around but still makes passive-aggressive comments from time to time. Uncle Loud Voicemail has thankfully moved on to complaining about something else. Caleb is happy, our home is peaceful, and I have zero regrets. And Lisa? Well, let's just say karma did find a way. Because a few days ago, Emily sent me a screenshot of Lisa's latest Facebook post. I just don't understand how people can be so selfish. Some of us weren't lucky enough to have free housing and a comfortable life. Must be nice to have everything handed to you. Must be nice to be so heartless. I laughed out loud, because you know what Lisa is referring to? The fact that I own my house. The one I worked my ass off to keep up. The one I didn't recklessly spend beyond my means to afford. So, am I a bad person for saying no? No. I'm just someone who refused to be Lisa's safety net at the expense of my own child. And if that makes me selfish, then so be it. Next story. Told my friend, "I'm sorry your parents don't love you as much as mine love me." Immediately regretted it, spent months making it up to him, accidentally helped him heal, now he never lets me forget it. I never thought I'd be in a situation where I'd ask myself, am I a bad person? But then again, I also never thought I'd tell my friend, "I'm sorry your parents don't love you as much as my parents love me." Yet here we are. It all started during one of those deep late-night conversations where you start out talking about completely random things like whether cereal is technically soup, and somehow end up unpacking your entire childhood trauma. My best friend Jake and I were sitting on my porch, wrapped in hoodies, drinking lukewarm soda, and watching the streetlights flicker. Jake had always had a complicated relationship with his parents. They weren't outright cruel, but they were the kind of people who saw affection as a weakness and emotional support as an optional upgrade, like leather seats in a car. His mom was constantly nitpicking every little thing about him, and his dad treated him more like a disappointing employee than a son. Meanwhile, my parents, while not perfect, were the kind of people who actually asked how my day was and meant it. They packed me lunches with little notes inside and made a big deal out of my birthdays. So when Jake, after a long silence, sighed and said, "I don't think my parents actually like me," I should have just listened. I should have nodded, maybe given him a comforting pat on the back, or even shared some uplifting Hallmark movie wisdom. But no. My dumb brain, completely unfiltered, responded with, "I'm sorry your parents don't love you as much as my parents love me." As soon as the words left my mouth, I knew I had messed up. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. You know it's bad, you know there's going to be damage, but there's no way to stop it now. Jake turned to me, his face completely blank, which somehow felt worse than if he had just gotten angry. He let out this dry, humorless laugh and said, "Wow. Thanks, man. That makes me feel so much better." I tried to backpedal. "No, wait, I didn't mean it like that. That came out wrong." But the damage was done. He stood up, muttered something about heading home, and left. I just sat there feeling like the worst person alive. For the next few days I gave him space. I knew I had to apologize, but I didn't know how to approach it without making things worse. Eventually, I just showed up at his house with a pizza, our universal peace offering. He let me in, and after a painfully awkward silence I finally blurted out, "Dude, I'm an idiot. I was trying to acknowledge your feelings, but I did it in the absolute worst way possible. Your parents not treating you right isn't some competition, and I shouldn't have said that. I'm really sorry." He sighed, took a bite of pizza, and after a moment said, "Yeah, that was pretty messed up. Fair." But then he added, "I know you didn't mean it to be cruel though. You just suck at words sometimes. Also fair." And just like that, things went back to normal. Well, mostly. Every now and then when I say something dumb, Jake just raises an eyebrow and goes, "Oh, you mean like how your parents love you more than mine love me?" and I know I'll never live it down. So, am I a bad person? I don't think so. But I am an absolute idiot sometimes. A few weeks after the incident, as Jake now calls it, we were hanging out at my place again, playing some video game neither of us were particularly good at. I had already lost, and Jake was on his last life, trying to survive a boss fight while I sat back, eating a handful of chips. That's when he casually asked, "So, do your parents actually love you more, or do they just show it better?" I nearly choked on my chips. "Dude, I apologized." "I know," he said, eyes still locked on the screen. "But I've been thinking about it." Jake had this way of dropping existential bombs into otherwise chill conversations, and this was no exception, because honestly, I had no idea how to answer that. I thought back to all the times my mom had hugged me for no reason, or the way my dad always made time to ask about my day, even when he was busy. I never had to wonder if they cared. Meanwhile, Jake had spent his whole life second-guessing every interaction with his parents, trying to figure out if their version of love was just criticism wrapped in disappointment. I said intelligently, "I think love isn't just about feeling it. It's about showing it. Like if my parents loved me but never showed it, how would I even know?" Jake finally died in the game, groaning as the screen flashed game over. He tossed the controller onto the couch and turned to me. "So you're saying love doesn't count unless you see it?" I frowned. "Not exactly, but I don't know. If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound?" Jake stared at me for a long moment. Then he smirked. "Did you just compare my childhood trauma to a philosophical riddle?" I panicked. We both cracked up, and just like that, the heaviness lifted. But the conversation stuck with me. Later that night, I couldn't stop thinking about how weird love is. How some people like me grow up swimming in it, while others, like Jake, spend their lives searching for proof of it. And I realized something. Jake might not have the kind of parents who told him they loved him, but that didn't mean he wasn't loved. Because love isn't just about where you get it from. It's also about where you find it. And if his parents weren't going to be the ones to show up for him, then well, I would. So the next time he came over, I did something stupidly simple. I made him a sandwich. Nothing fancy, just a turkey and cheese, the same way my mom used to make for me. When I handed it to him, he raised an eyebrow. Thanks." I shrugged. "Dude, that's what friends do. They feed each other." Jake stared at me like I had just handed him a briefcase full of diamonds. Then he muttered, "You are such a weirdo," and took a bite. And just like that, I knew he got it. Because sometimes love isn't about grand gestures. Sometimes it's just about showing up. With a pizza. With a dumb joke. With a turkey sandwich. And yeah, maybe I said the absolute worst thing at the worst time that night on the porch. But if love is about showing it, then I was going to make damn sure Jake never had to wonder again. A few months passed, and the incident became one of those inside jokes Jake never let me live down. Anytime I so much as hesitated before speaking, he'd smirk and go, "Careful, wouldn't want you to drop another hard truth on me." And honestly, that was his way of letting me off the hook. Because Jake never really held grudges. Not against me anyway. Against his parents? Different story. One night, we were in my car parked outside his house. He had just come back from dinner with his family, and from the way he slumped in the passenger seat, I knew it had been one of those nights. "Bad?" I asked. They spent 20 minutes talking about how my cousin just bought a house. Then my mom asked if I really liked my job, or if I was settling. He ran a hand through his hair. I could cure cancer, and they'd probably ask why it took me so long. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. I just let him sit in it. After a minute, he exhaled and turned to me. "Hey, remember that time you said your parents love you more than mine love me?" I groaned. "Dude. No, I get it now." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I used to think love was just like a thing you deserved. Like you're born, your parents automatically love you. And that's that. But it's not, is it?" I shrugged. "I mean, it should be." "Yeah, but not everyone's lucky." He tapped his fingers on the dashboard, staring out the window. "And you were right. They don't love me like your parents love you. But I think that's more about them than it is about me." That hit different. For years, Jake had bent himself into knots trying to earn something that should have been freely given. But now, he was realizing it wasn't his failure. It was theirs. And I swear, I could see something shift in him. Like he was letting go of some weight he'd been carrying for years. Damn, I said, nodding. That was kinda deep, dude. Yeah, well. He smirked. Been doing a lot of self-reflection. Thanks to my emotionally well-adjusted friend, with the superior parents. I rolled my eyes. Okay, now you're pushing it. But I wasn't mad. Because yeah, I messed up that night on the porch. I said the worst possible thing, at the worst possible time. But somehow in the mess of it all, we stumbled into something real. Jake finally stopped trying to squeeze love out of a stone. And I learned that love isn't just about where you get it. It's about where you give it too. And maybe, just maybe, that means I'm not such a bad person after all.